Hey, this is Lux.
And this is Sina Grace.
And this is Dayspring, and welcome to a very special episode, Power of X-Men. Welcome to Power of X-Men, and today we are going to be talking about the Iceman series by Sina Grace with a very special mutant by the name of Lux. Lux, what's going on?
Not much, Dayspring. I'm so excited. I have just been thinking about this series for so long, and it's just stuck in my head permanently in the best way.
I love this series so much, and I love you because I feel like you have been part of the Power of X-Men community since day one. And to give folks a quick bio on you, you grew up on the central coast of California, where you did theater all through high school, and after that you joined the Navy as an enlisted journalist for 5 years before moving to Salt Lake City to be closer to family and get your Bachelor of Science in Strategic Communications with a minor in documentary studies. And during undergrad, you wrote a paper on Sina Grace's Iceman, and you have been reading the series all the way through, and you spend too much money on comic books. Did I get that right?
Yeah, that's 100%. That's it. With this comic series, I remember I was in this class that was just all about critically analyzing Disney as a corporation, as a media conglomerate, and even Walt Disney, the man. And our final project was you need to pick something owned by Disney and analyze it through either a Marxist, a feminist, or a queer studies lens. And this was 2018, I believe. So it's just a little while after they decided to force Iceman out of the closet. And so I was like, well, let's read this solo series that I've heard about. Let's do that. And I did. And the owner of my local comic shop, his name is Greg also. That's my first name as well. He was so helpful. Him and his manager, Taylor, Black Cat Comics in Salt Lake City.
Yes.
Love them.
Love that.
And they helped me pick out everything. This was about halfway through the third volume is where we were when I was writing this. And there was just such a rich area to mine from out of just Sina's work.
Well, so we can sit here and we can talk about Iceman in great detail, but because you're such a big fan of the series, I decided to invite someone to join our chat, and they're joining right now. It's why we have Sina Grace himself.
Dayspring, you are so shady. I'm having a whole fangirl moment right now. Sina, I love you so much.
Hi. Sorry. I started eating a cookie.
That's okay. I'm going to do my best to not just only compliment you for the next hour and a half. I'll compliment you a lot, though.
No, let's just talk about like political affairs. How about that?
Folks, if you can't see what just happened, if you're just listening to the podcast, Sina Grace, the writer of Iceman, has just joined the chat. What's up?
Oh my
Sina?
God, this is so exciting.
So, Sina, this is Lux, and his real name is Greg. You already said that. And Greg, this is Sina Grace.
Oh my God, this is so cool. Sina, how's your day been?
It's been good. It's been good. Just been counting the minutes for this to happen. No, I yesterday, in the midst of announcing that I didn't make it to the final two of a DC competition, I was like, but I'm doing my own book at Image. And so I've been working on that today. I'm working on just like a nice 64-page one shot that is about like two best friends throwing a party. So I was drawing that today, and it makes me really happy. Yeah, how are you doing? What did you do today?
Today, I honestly I was at work and just talking to everyone who would listen. I was like, you're never going to believe what I'm doing today. I'm going on a podcast to talk about comic books. My life is great. And now I'm just
fun, right?
I'm composing myself. This is a shock to my core.
Well, I feel like I can see an Iceman action figure in the back of your.
Certainly can. I bought that as like a present to myself after that semester. And he just lives up there. He watches over my bedroom.
Wait, Sina, you couldn't hear what Lux was talking about in the waiting room, right? We don't have like music. So
it was so disabled.
So,
also, that word sounds like it needs to not be used anymore, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, you were in a traditional waiting room with no sound or entertainment. How about that?
Yeah, I was in a void, and then I found my cookies.
So Lux, I don't think Sina knows that you wrote a college paper on Iceman, and you can refresh me what the course was, but I did read the paper when you and I started talking, and it was such a wonderful paper, and you do talk about Sina's run quite a bit in there.
Yeah, so the purpose of the course was to critically analyze things that are owned by Disney. And the final project was you had to pick anything that was technically under that giant conglomerate umbrella and analyze it through either a Marxist, a feminist, or a queer studies lens. And I was telling Dayspring this was just before the issue with Spider-Man and Firestar came out.
Yes.
So I was just like, well, let's read this comic book. Let's see what this is all about. And let's try to focus it on this. I talk about Frank Welker voicing Iceman in the original Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends show. I talk about Sean Ashmore a little bit. But most of it is just all right here. And I got to say, my favorite part about writing that paper was citing little ice puns. There's a part where I just list like Bobby saying "ice to meet you," and I just laughed as I was writing that and like putting in MLA citations. But it was just fun, and I've just spent the last 2 years since I wrote, or 3 now, I guess, since I wrote it, just talking about it and sending it to anyone who will read it. And
Aww.
I think I actually, because you were on this podcast before, correct?
Yeah.
That's how I found this podcast. I was just like,
really?
Sina's talking about Iceman. Let's hear what's going on.
Oh shit! Wow.
So it's like a weird full circle moment for me right now.
Sina, the amount of people that have come to this podcast because of that. So we were Generations of X previously, and so now it's Power of X-Men. But the amount of people who have found this community from that episode, it's so many.
I would just have assumed it's from like someone like Demanda Martini, but I'll take it. Thank you.
We love Demanda.
Oh, that's lovely.
Love her.
That's lovely. Yeah. I'm glad I'm glad that I think that was one of the most like heartwarming, like things. I guess takeaway is the right word. Like the best like takeaway from that whole experience is that even if the people I was working with like weren't always picking up what I was putting down, it was really lovely when there were people who would actually kind of look at what was going on in the book, in the series overall, and sort of give it the respect of reading into the subtext and reading into everything, like even just sort of there's just like lots of room to sort of I put a lot of avenues to dissect that book and to kind of take meaning where people want that. That wasn't a mistake, so I'm really happy that you spent the time to do an MLA citation for Ice to meet you.
My goal was I wanted my professor, Dr. Griffin, to like just read that and laugh. Like college is dumb sometimes. It was like Ice to meet you in quotations and then in parentheses Grace, comma, page 53.
Sina, I didn't know this until later. Like there was an Iceman series before yours. I always assumed you were first solo. Did you ever reference that when you were writing both your Iceman volumes?
I I got them both. I got them both with the intention to do that. Those were both really peculiar Iceman books and did not really have anything for me to take from them.
I agree.
They're just weird. They're really weird. The one from, what was it, the 80s or something, it's like he deals with like dimensional, like, I don't even know what the fuck they were, but like, you know, he deals with like the weirdest, dumbest villains that like don't have anything to do with him. And then the next one is all about like having a weird illegitimate baby with his ex-girlfriend and like genetic blah blah blah. And I just thought, and the covers were so cool. So I was so excited when I got those on eBay, and then I read them and was like, there's nothing in here for me.
Nothing to mine.
That was the second series was during that like relaunch, that like Morrison relaunch, where he has nothing but the leather and he's like shirtless.
Yeah.
But the first one, I'm pulling it up right now. Like, it's just weird. Like,
it's weird. He goes to like a family party and like hits on an old neighbor or something, and I was trying to like look through that because obviously the family was a huge component of my series, but again, there just wasn't. It just, yeah, they were just such weird, like, I don't want to be mean because these are people who worked on these books and I'm sure they had the best of intentions, but I just think, I don't know, they just like passed time. Like they weren't, they weren't anything, which is so funny because it's like what I'd give to like get to do an Iceman book where there are like, we just need to fill the calendar, like instead of like, hey, don't fuck it up and represent an entire like community of people, and then like also don't fuck it up.
Yeah, no pressure at all. Did you, and I can't remember if we talked about this when you were on the podcast before, did you feel any pressure when you were writing Iceman to get everything right? I know you said that you consulted with a lot of people, especially when you were creating Shade.
Yeah, well, more, and actually Shade, aka Dark Veil, I didn't do that much consulting because that was just sort of like that like got ahead of us. Like I just thought it was going to be cool and I wanted to throw it in and have fun with it, and didn't feel as nervous about speaking for that community per se. But with the Madden character, who is like very much a read on the trans non-binary community, and like just talking about that, especially with Morlocks, because you want, it's like you want to shine a light on a thing, but you don't want to like disrespect the thing or add another layer of like grime to a community that actually needs like light. Like the TV show Pose, I think always like has to juggle that all the time, where they have to be real, but they also want to give their characters happy endings, and it's tough. I wish I kept a journal because like I don't like my memory of it. Yes and no. Like certain things I felt really confident and mellow about, and then other things I felt like I had to get just right. And the main thing I said the whole time and believe, and is true and still true to this day, was just I would always mine from real experiences, because there were just so many people who were still upset about that that whole journey for Bobby Drake to come out and be gay. That I just didn't. I was like, okay, I've got to kind of go like authentic with this. And so I just, really focused on like real stories my friends had. And like I dated this guy who, when he came out to his parents, like he wasn't out to his parents when I dated him, and he was like 25, 26. And he wrote a letter to them, and, his mom said, like, we need to talk. I love you. Nothing changes that, but we need to talk. And I think that's in the book. I love you. Nothing changes that.
I think that's at the end of the first volume.
Yeah, I think the dad says it, right?
Mm-hmm.
I and that was the other thing too, was just trying to kind of subvert what the parent figures do in pop culture was like sort of important to me, to kind of just make it complicated and make it weird. I think the thing that I thought I did well, and then when it came out, people were like not happy, was the Kitty and Bobby interaction. And that was because, again, that came from a real experience. That was like what a girlfriend said to me when I came out to her ex-girlfriend. But I think I think different people characterized both of them as pretty like selfish in that interaction. But you know what, by the end of the book, because that's the thing too, is like no one really wanted to give me any credit. So like they read that issue in a vacuum, had their opinions, and then when, by the end of the arc, when Kitty comes around in her own way, and when their relationship, grows and matures as characters should do in a story arc, it all kind of made sense. But I think like the month that book came out, and again, everyone was looking for something to be mad about with it. So they were both kind of like, people on both sides kind of thought of them as like kind of pretty selfish, which, that's the thing too with storytelling. Your characters can't always, be like Disney perfect.
Yeah, no.
Right. And I think one of the big things that struck with me was that Kitty did a thing that sometimes people will do, is that Bobby is coming to her and saying, I need to deal with this in my own way. And she kind of centered herself, which is, something I've seen many, many people do just over the course of my life, and just make it about her. And I thought it was a very realistic expression.
Yeah. I mean, these are, again, because these are real people to me, or you know what I mean? Like these are like the experiences they had leading up to all of that, and that's the only way that's like the other thing I did too, is like, you just kind of have to be like this, like all this stuff happened. Like he dated all of these women and had all of these experiences with them. And he's like saved the world a million times. And, but here he is now, like dealing with a bunch of stuff he never dealt with, because he was able to, like every day, look, new crisis, cool, don't have to deal with my shit. Like, cool, like get to like, I saved the world, I can just go to bed.
You know which ex-girlfriend, now that I'm thinking of it, wasn't in the series, and I'm curious if you ever had plans with her, was Lorna. Was Lorna ever on your radar?
Doesn't she get a text message at the beginning? You have the trade right there. Issue 3, page 1. I think there's a text message.
I have that page open, Sina, because I specifically wanted to ask you about it. So in this scene, Bobby's outside of his parents' house, and he's just, this first arc to me was just about him coming out fully on his own terms as much as he could, even though everyone's hearing it through the grapevine. And he just sends a text message out to everyone, and just breaking it down like, hey, I'm processing this, let's go. And then it's got different text backs. And my favorite are actually, it's Lorna is one of them. She says, a part of me always kind of thought so. That's probably why I picked Alex, which chef's kiss, perfect. And then I think Dayspring is going to agree with me on another one of my favorites is Boom Boom. Her response is just, new phone, who dis?
I love that. And no, I agree with you. I felt very satisfied with that text message from Lorna, where she was here, like on some level I was new, because again, in like a previous like issue, I think it was during her bachelorette party, she's here like, I never slept with Bobby. And so like, I'm totally cool with that. But I was curious if there was ever any plans for someone like Lorna to come in the book, or if you just were like, I think this sort of encompasses everything I need to say about that relationship with that text message.
Yeah, the text message, you have to understand, like, I think when I was writing issue 3, like, I was getting, like, I got a phone call, like, they were like, we're going to have you talk to Axel Alonso. Like, and he was like, I like your book, you're already canceled, but I'm going to give you, he's like, I want to give you, like, 2 more issues. Like, he said he was going to give me 12 issues, but then he left. I think he left. He didn't get fired. He left, right?
He left.
So then they gave me 1 issue. Like, I made a case for 1 issue. And so I got 11 instead of 12. Because, he basically was like, yeah, like, let me give you as much time as possible but you're also on a timeline, like on a clock. But like the trade needs to come out. We need to see how that does. So like, we'll buy you a little more time. And he was giving me feedback for how the story should go. And he was just like, he's like, every book is a bullet. Like, and I looked at your outlines, and, you know, he was the one that told me, because I forget what happens in the book. Iceman comes out and then he fights Juggernaut.
Yes. Yeah. So in
originally it was the other way around.
Okay.
I don't remember why I thought that was a good idea, but he was the one to tell me. He was the one to tell me that it should be the other way around, which, like, you know, then it's like chef's kiss, like everything then kind of like coalesces perfectly. So you know, I was writing every issue just thinking like, crap, I don't really have time to like enjoy myself. And then also the issue 6-7 where the Generations arc, like that was also kind of like, you know, like the editor at the time was like, hey, you have to be a part of this thing. Like, send us some Bobby ideas that go for Generations. I'm thinking Champions. And I sent him some ideas, and he's like, Champions it is. And it was like, you know, then it was like, I don't know how to fit this in. This is really big. And so then he was like, okay, you get 2 issues. So then it just, like, you know, the whole time I just never had the luxury of time. And then by the time, the word time, it just keeps coming up. Then when I had the opportunity to do the 3rd collection, that at that point I just kind of wanted to do my own thing. And it was less about, you know, looking at these corners or thinking about these characters. And it was more being like, okay, you have still back to only having so many bullets, but instead of kind of focusing on how other people would want me to use those bullets, I focused on how I wanted to use them. And that's why I always like the 3rd one the most. Like, don't tell everyone, I don't care. Because it's like, that one's still in print, so make everyone buy it.
Yes, go buy it right now.
Everyone should absolutely buy it. It's got a great cover.
You have all the just like...
I love it. I have the trades back home. I'm in Florida right now. I don't have my trades. I'm so jealous right now, Lux.
I've got all my trades back there. I am ready for this. Actually, one of the things I did want to ask you, Sina, is, so the whole book, right, is very funny. Like, along with being heartfelt in a way that feels like a Saturday morning cartoon, but not overly cheesy. Everyone is funny, like, in their own ways. So how do you tap into, like, you know, Lorna being funny this way, but then Bobby over here being funny this way, or even like Dakin makes a fridging joke in, I think it's the 3rd volume.
Yeah, I mean, I guess.
Like, so how do you just like tap into all those different mindsets?
I usually will playlists. I would make a lot of playlists for each character. And then I think if you like, you know, like, tension can also be used for comedy. And that was sort of where I went with things. And I also, because I needed to prove that, like, Bobby, like, the nervous jokes were like part of the character, and you know, maybe I am a bad writer, but like, it was like, I need you to know that, like,
not at all,
like, the incessant dad jokes are a tick, not because, like, I'm like, hey guys, like, I got another one for you. So I tried to kind of inject jokes in other ways that worked differently than the way Bobby's humor was. And like with Dakin, like, damn, and I told the editor what the dirty jokes were, because they flew over his head, and if I'd have just kept them in, I think their first issue together, where like they're at that like private club, he said so many raunchy things to him. Yes. He made a shocker joke. He made I think he made an orgy joke, and that was the one that the editor caught, because he was using like ice golems, and he made like a group scenario joke, and he was like, no.
Even in Winter's, I'm sorry to cut you off, but even in Winter's End, we see them together on the bed with like their legs on top of each other, and that was extremely raunchy.
Yeah, but I think it's like people can be in bed together, but people can't like say what they're doing in bed. It's the weird dance with like these things, because isn't like when like who was it who fucked Juggernaut, like She-Hulk or something?
Yeah.
And there's that awesome.
I missed that issue entirely, but I'm gonna go buy it right now.
Yeah, it was the early
2000s.
It's like that big shot of them together in bed snuggling after.
Yeah, yeah, it's that you can kind of show after the fact, and you can show smooches, but like, you know, Lord knows you can never show someone with their like hand like, you know, in the direction of like a downstairs part. I don't think.
Didn't Morrison and Quietly, I think Morrison, they wanted to show Emma giving Scott like a psychic blowjob or something like that. Wow. And it was like, no, we can't do that. I don't know. I mean, I'm remembering things I like read on the message boards or interviews I heard of back before there was even like Ethernet cords. But I always think it's really interesting how like sex is depicted in comics. But that scene with, I always say Dakin. Did you say, how did you pronounce it, Sina?
I think it's, I say Dakin.
So that scene with like Dakin and like Bobby, that is such a hot scene.
Which one?
Like the one where they're at the club dancing.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
It's very tense.
Yes.
I wanted to, and that was a very, I don't know. I wanted to do them as like kind of the will they, won't they thing. And then my editors were like, you've got better stories to tell than like giving Bobby Drake a love life. And then I was like, yeah, like let's make him single and like not have that be on the fucking menu. And it's funny because only after the book was done, in that weird in between part of like me leaving and Hickman coming on and Marauders getting announced, that's when it was like, oh, like actually I don't know if I ever would have picked up that like he and Christian Frost could be a thing. I kind of wanted them to be foils and have Christian kind of almost be like, I don't know, but you know, I think that would have been hot too, but like it's just sort of like, oh, like Christian's like this broken boy. Yeah, would have been sexy. I don't know. Who knows? Do they have sex in Jerry Duggan's book?
They do have sex.
Good.
They do.
Good. I'm gonna take credit for that. I set that up.
I love Christian Frost. I loved Christian Frost in obviously when they introduced him, but then he came back in the Emma series. And I think it was a maxi series, and he was more fleshed out there until they brought him to Morrison. And then he was MIA. And then you brought him back, and I think that you were telling us it's because you had a conversation with Daniel Ketchum that you wanted to use Emma, but Emma was busy. I may be butchering your story here, but someone said to you, well, she has a gay brother that we haven't used, and that's why you got the idea to bring him in.
Yeah, Daniel wasn't the one. It was my editor, Darren.
Okay, gotcha.
Darren Shan was the one who said that. Yeah. Yeah, he's a cool dude. I just would have like, I'm one of those people who like, I wanted to fix him before I like thought of him as a love interest, because he just sort of like was just out of like so many traumatic experiences. And but I saw some drawing of him and I was like, he got sexy. He got really sexy really fast.
He looked so different when Phil Jimenez drew him in Murder at the Mansion. I believe that was the arc they first introduced Christian, and then in the Emma series. And then when you brought him back, he looked more like how he did in the Emma series. I'm forgetting who your artist was.
Nate Stockman. Yeah. He's good. He takes a lot of like my fashion cues. That's very important to me.
Have you seen Iceman's Gala look, Hellfire Gala look? What do you think of that?
I don't know if I saw the official one, because there's so like the number of like the number of official looks versus like fan made ones. Oh, look at that cattail.
Cattail.
That's how you know we're all humans, as our pets show up on Zooms. I I don't know if I've seen the real one, because again, I've just like so many show up on my Twitter feed and on Instagram, and you know, so many of these like fan accounts are like, you know, kind of like conglomerating them and formatting them the same way. So I don't know if I've seen it. Is it good? Is because I saw one where he's in like heels. Like,
I think that's
is that the official one?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Where he's in like the Gaga, the McQueen heels from like the mid 2000s. Hang on, I'm trying to pull it up here. My reception is.
I might pull a Madonna and call it reductive. I don't know. I think like I think like with like someone out there like Lil Nas X, like you either think of like what the next thing is, or you do something. Oh, it's not like. Yeah, I don't know. That doesn't feel like very Bobby to me. Like, I mean, I don't know. Maybe it is. Maybe people love it, but I just feel like it's like, you know, I don't know.
It didn't feel
I'm not
Bobby
bitter.
to me. It didn't feel very Bobby to me. I think it feels very Prodigy. I think it's very much some other characters, but for Bobby, I thought it was a little out there, even given his like current, you know, appearance in Marauders. What did you think, Lux?
I was a little disappointed in that one. It felt a little bit too almost pandery. I'm behind on the comics. I enjoy reading the trades just because I like how they display. So maybe they've had this big evolution in Bobby, but I feel like the Bobby that you wrote, Sina, is, you know, his queer identity isn't the whole of his identity. And this feels like they're leaning into that a little bit more than, you know, you would have if you were still in charge of the character.
I guess for me, if I'd have had a say in it or had thoughts on it, like, yeah, like, because like I would always put him in like Fred Perry things, like his like I think he kept like a tight, clean look, like his color blocking. Like,
I agree.
I was agree, great. By the way, like he wasn't trying to like, he wasn't like David from Schitt's Creek. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like he was like, yeah, like that looks like an outfit. That doesn't even look like an outfit David would wear. That looks like an outfit Billy Porter would wear. Like, you know, but like also it's like, okay, cool. Like, I don't know. If people embraced it, then that's hot, in the sense of like, you know, like people just finally like being like, all right, Bobby's gay, and sometimes he wears like outfits we don't agree with.
Right. And I will say, on the topic of Hellfire looks in general, I think the best ones are the ones that incorporate their powers, right? Storm's look
that's beautiful.
Just takes the crown every single time. But even you have all of Emma's looks and Jean using her powers to hold her headpieces in place. And then I think the ones that kind of fall short, like the Kate Pride one, are just like, oh, it's just kind of like an interesting looking outfit that I could wear. Whereas if they'd like incorporated her phasing ability somehow, it would have been a really interesting take on.
Oh, that's like, a really great point.
The thing that made me think of it is there's a part on hers where it like two pieces of fabric go across and they cross her body and make an X on the side, I think. Like just something as simple as putting that cross in the middle of her torso or something.
Yeah.
But it's hard, and I'm not the artist, so I guess I can't complain too much.
I mean, you can't complain all you want. I think that's the great thing about X-Men in particular, is the fans really, really have such a personal relationship with it, and it's so meaningful to the people who participate with it. Like, I think, like, you know, the Avengers are cool, but we don't like see ourselves like in the Avengers in that like really real way that like fucks you up and hits you to your core. Like, I don't think anybody fucking cares about like the Black Widow Hulk relationship in the MCU, like, or like,
thank you,
even
next.
Yeah, like, I don't know. It just, you know, like someone's gonna get like the only couple that like I stand from the MCU that like has fucking teeth to me is like Wanda and Vision. You know what I mean? Like they're the only ones with like legitimate depth and like stakes.
Like every other relationship in those movies is just like, oh shit, we need two straight people to be in love.
Yeah.
Whereas the WandaVision relationship makes sense.
Yeah. And they like gave it time in the show to like have it actually make sense. Cause I think a lot of the movies were just like, they're together and it's a big deal and just take our word for it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's, I just, you know, I think it's, yeah, like having those opinions and being, feeling a way about decisions is very like par for the course and like, I would say like necessary to being an X-Men fan.
Well, one of the things that I was thinking about, Dayspring just got off an Instagram live with Mr. Scott Free, and they were talking about how there are some people who will just to the bitter end stand this character or that character, whether it's a B-list, C-list, D-list character. And I was thinking about that watching the live, and I think that is the thing that makes the X-Men so special, that it's not a book about Captain America or a book about the Hulk or a book where these two characters exist together. It's a book about this whole group. And you get to look at that group and see everyone on equal footing and be like, I see myself in Banshee, right? When we did... what was the first book club? I'm blanking on it now.
Oh, it was the Phalanx Covenant.
Right. So when we did that, I connected with Banshee and Phalanx. Like it was like this big moment I had sitting right in this chair, just like, oh shit, I love this character all of a sudden.
Yeah.
And he doesn't have a huge part in the book. I think he's pretty central, but you know, there's a lot of screen time to be shared.
Well,
Yeah.
I think to both your points, I think what makes the X-Men so special is that when you grow up and you are the other, the idea that there's a school where you can go off to and you can be saved from persecution, from real world terror and find a family and find a tribe. Like that's very powerful at a young age. And I credit the X-Men for me at a young age to be able to cook these ideas of otherness, and which would eventually evolve to me going to school like you, Greg, and like studying Judith Butler and reading The Dialect of Sex. And I already had a baseline for that understanding. And I think the X-Men can really speak to people in that general way. Does that make sense? I feel like I'm just rambling here.
No, you're not rambling.
I had a Corona Light, so I'm like, I'm so drunk now.
You're fucking wild. You're crazy. Oh my god.
Oh my god.
It's empty. You drank it all.
The whole thing?
Well, the whole thing, I know.
Who is she?
Insane.
I know. No, she's all tipsy. Look at that.
That's good. Get into it. You're in Florida. Like, you should have had two more.
But I think the X-Men, I mean, I think there's the obvious metaphor, and we spoke about that in the previous conversation, Sina. And I think a lot of people relate to that on some level. And I think that's why the X-Men have a spectrum of audiences.
And you get to see, you know, I think the other thing is you get to see kids who start out not being the hero or start out being they're on top of being othered in the grand scheme of things, they also in this own world suffer from whatever else holds them back, and most of them grow into really magnificent human beings who change the course of history. And I think that must be powerful too, because then you do look at all these kids, and you know, it's like when we watch the movies and you're like, wait, was that Jubilee in the classroom? Wait, was that Bishop? Like, or, you know, I mean, you always know who Bishop is in the movies, but like, you know, you're the fan, we're all like looking through saying like, oh my God, like, is that an Easter egg, or are they planting something? Or because those people end up becoming just such magnificent characters. And yeah, you don't get that with these other books. the same way. And so, and that's a really special thing, I think, if you're the shy, quiet kid, or you're the weird looking one, and then you know, like, especially like you're all of them, your penance. You know?
Mm.
And then
But
it
I
just
think-
goes, and then you turn Jamila Jamil, like.
There's just like, I remember being in fourth grade and getting that Fleer Ultra 94 of Rogue, and just reading this little bio, and we were talking to Zeb Wells about this, and like, that's all you had on a character for like weeks. You know, you can't hop on Wikipedia in 1994 because the internet just didn't exist. And so you'd have to go out there and source that information, and it made that information, that character history, so precious to you. And I was organizing some stuff here in my childhood bedroom, and I was like, wow, for the longest time, the only information I had on Magma was this little card. And I didn't read any issues about her until like maybe like 7 years later, but I knew who Magma was. And I remember seeing the movie, exactly what you were saying, Sina, and seeing X-Men 1 and being like, oh my God, was that girl with the red hair and the necklace? Was that Magma? Was that supposed to be her? And it just, there's something about X-Men that just incites that passion.
Yeah, there's just always something to dig into, which is phenomenal. I think I had when Dayspring and I first started talking about doing this epised, I was like, okay, well, I'm just going to reread it. I'm going to take some notes. I'm going to do this, and I was trying so. Well, so I was trying so hard not to DM him about it and just be like, oh my God, I forgot about this. This is so much funny. This is so much funnier than I remember it being. And the one time
save it for the podcast. Save it for the podcast.
The one time I broke, though, was when I was reading that text message scene, because I don't think I told you that Iceman was the first comic that I read. Right, I'd read a little bit here and there, but this was the first one that I actually like looked at and spent time on. So the text message scene, to me, not really having a big background in comics, it played just as like, okay, I can kind of get it. I understand what this phone is. Oh, haha, she got a new phone. Who is this? But reading it, having a bigger knowledge after, reading all the comics and being a part of the community here, it was so much better. And it's so great to have that like next level of enjoyment. I'm just like,
love it. I don't think there's a question.
The reread value. There wasn't. I do have a question. So you as the writer, how do you go about controlling the passage of time in between panels, right? Because some comic books, Iceman is one of them. Saga is another one. If you've never read Saga, oh my God, read it. But the time between panels is really crucial to the storytelling, the flow of a scene. So is that something that you're just like, okay, I've got Stockman doing my art, figure it out? Or is that something that you're like, no, I want this panel to do this and this panel to do that?
So a couple things play into that. I draw comics on my own, so I always like lay out the story myself, just to make sure like I'm not doing anything that would really annoy the artist, or something that would make sense. But one thing an editor told me was that, because I would when I would do these heavy outlines and really break down what would happen, panel to panel, an editor told me like, the reader doesn't need to see how someone gets somewhere. Like, they know that the character gets there. So you don't have to show like Iceman walks down the hallway to get to the other room, to get to the, parking lot. Like, he can just be in the parking lot the next panel. And that was like really hard for me, because I think like there's like a weird storyboard or element in my head where I'm like, no, we must track. But all that being said is, and then it comes down to like communication and playing to each of the artist's strengths. Like, the first artist we had, Alessandro Vitti, like didn't speak English. And so, we had to be very like specific in case he was using like Google Translate. And then Nate was really humor driven, but then would miss like, I only realized this like after working with him. He would like miss like cues because we would get so chatty and bantery about just like the vibe of things that then like it's like, oh, but he totally like did not know that that was like, you know, that panel needed to show that thing. Like there was in the first issue with Nate in volume 3, at the end there was supposed to be a scene where like Bobby's like cloning himself like crazy, and for whatever reason he just like didn't draw it and like focused on this other thing, and so we had to like after the fact put a balloon coming from off screen being like, there's many more of them like attacking us, they're multiplying like crazy. Because like I didn't notice it either. I was like too busy just being like, wow, this double page spread is awesome. And also like I'm not the editor. Sorry, like, but it's also like, but when you're the writer, you have to like advocate for those things, because I think editors get really swamped and they're not always looking at the script next to the artwork, and they're just more like, oh, is the artwork turned in on time? And I think something I learned was like, oh, they like expect the writer to like triple check this stuff too.
Interesting.
But yeah, no. So yeah, I think it's, you know, it's just a matter of like what the artist's strengths are, and also what the purpose, like what the journey you want to put the reader on is too. Like if you want to disorient them, or if there is something to be gained by kind of giving them like an idiosyncratic experience, so on and so forth. Or if you just want to do a cool fight scene, like, you know, and then you're just like, all right, like I just need to devote 12 pages to like the shit looking cool.
So like when you're talking about like wanting to do a cool fight scene, is that something that like when you're finding like a new way for Bobby to use his powers, for example, is that something that you just have this cool image in your mind? Like, how do I work that into his power set?
No, that was the hardest part for me. I have the worst imagination for that stuff, which is so crazy because like I grew up reading all of this and I just like, my brain does not go to those things. I mean, I think my brain knew exactly what to do when he and Emma go into his mind like that. Like I knew visually like what I wanted to do there and how that would play out, but it was always like me trying to come up with something new or interesting that either had been done but just hadn't been done as exciting, you know, as like magnificently. And then even then it would be like, oh great, the one issue of like Astonishing X-Men I didn't read or something, or no, it wasn't that, it was like Wolverine and the X-Men, and then it was like, oh yeah, the one issue I didn't pick up, like he does that thing, okay, whatever. But you know, more to that point, I focused on the like the metaphor of it. So it would, the ice manifestation would kind of like, I talk a lot about phases in the book and like the phases of matter, and even the word matter in the book is like deployed with great intention. And so, you know, I talk a lot about how like in that first arc, he talks with his dad about how, you know, phasing into the mist was sort of actually like self-harm. Mm-hmm. And I, by the end of my arc, wanted to just turn every sort of thing he did with his ice power into actually like self-love. So that was, I kind of focused on the metaphor, and then would be like, okay, here's what I'm thinking to the artist. And then I'd be like, but if you can think of something better, please do. So yeah, that's what I did.
I do also want to say, and just big respect, it was V the one who did he do the art for the Juggernaut issue?
Yeah, Alessandro did that.
Okay. The panel where, this is a spoiler, if you've never read it before, fast forward 20 seconds. There's a panel where Juggernaut crushes Bobby, right? And that's what triggers him phasing into the mist and then reappearing. Vapor. Yeah. But there's like a close-up on the side of Bobby's face as like his body is crushed. That panel is traumatizing. That panel haunts my dreams. It is so good.
Alessandro was like a beast with that stuff. Yeah. He wasn't pulling off the monthly deadlines, but he was, but the issues he did were like out of control.
Yeah, look at that.
It's just the whole
Well, you know, we
thing.
gotta make the reader think he's gonna die. Like,
And like I knew he wasn't. The book is I had volume 2 in my hand while I was reading this. And I was like, oh my God, did they just kill my baby boy Bobby?
Oh my God, I love that you got him.
yeah. Yeah, the next arc is all Vision becomes Iceman. Sorry.
Sina, one of the things that I love about, and I've been thinking about this for a while with the idea of the LGBTQIA plus metaphor, is that you really utilize Teen Bobby. And I thought the scene where Teen Bobby comes to have dinner with the parents, and the parents' mindset is, oh my God, we have a fresh start. We can do what we did wrong. Like, we can undo what we did wrong and make it right with our son. I mean, how was it writing something like that? Because I think it really humanized the parents, and that's something you did throughout the entire run. Don't get me wrong, but that moment in particular, you really see what makes these folks tick. And I just thought it was brilliant the way you executed that.
Yeah, well, it just goes back to, like, I wanted to always kind of just slightly subvert what your expectations are of parent figures in this process. Like, because parents are people too, and they're coming from where they're coming from, and it's, you know, and they have these weird, they project these like weird expectations on you because, like, you're theirs, you know, but then also a lack of you puts things in perspective too. So I just wanted to, you know, I wanted to just make them complicated, but like always still kind of weird and fucked up. And that issue was a lot of fun for me because, you know, I think like older Bobby just lived so much in, like, you know, like kind of just like he was like always down on himself for being so behind on the times. And then young Bobby, you know, is just sort of like just such a punk, like he just doesn't give a fuck. And it's great and it's fun and it's refreshing. So I liked that, and I liked even that, just making that character vulnerable too, you know, in his own way. That was a really lovely issue. And it's funny because I feel like in a lot of, it's almost like I had to start the series with like Buffy's little sister Dawn, or like Seven, the kid in Married with Children who shows up for like,
I think about Seven all the time because I watched Married with Children as a kid, but I never really fully realized what happened with his arc until I was an adult. So I love the scene where Christina Applegate's character, I forget, Kelly, is thinking of something and like she's learning new things, but like her old memories are leaving, and Seven is just randomly like one of those images that pop out of her head that she forgets about, which I love.
So it was a little bit like that, where you have this like, I'm the precocious like burst of new energy starting the series. And it was just you know, sometimes it felt like a little bit of a creative hindrance because it was like, I have to explain that this character's here, and also that character like is like captivating and young and isn't hung up on these things that like younger readers are so sick of too, you know. But then it's like, but the job I had was to focus on this older guy and his Irish Catholic guilt, and like him dealing with like the legacy of his own self. So it was so weird to like have him there. But then I think in that issue, I at least got to like work it to my benefit and be like, ha, little kid, you got issues too, motherfucker. Like,
but it was just so brilliant because I've had friends who've come out later in life, like in their mid to late 30s. And they've always asked the question, well, what would my life have been like had I come out, you know, earlier during my teen life? And I know, obviously, with the continuity in the comic books, that is Bobby, and he did come out, but he didn't know he had those experiences until after Extermination. But I thought it was just such a really great way of someone like that just to see that. But also, he had his own strength and he had his own journey, and I just thought it was so lovely the way that story unfolded in the end.
Well, thank you.
You're
I'll take credit for it.
How did you feel about Jean when Teen Jean outed Bobby, and you sort of dealt with that in Winter's End? You sort of closed the the debate and the back and forth on that because he confronts adult Jean about it. How did you feel about that coming out scene that Bendis wrote, and then you sort of had to tie that up?
Well, I will say I didn't have to tie it up. I wanted to tie it up. That was something I kind of wanted to. It was the same thing of like when the minute I got on the book, I was like, I want to do this, I want to do that, I want to do this, and it was like the Emma thing, the Jean thing, and with the Emma thing, she was like tied up. The Jean thing, Jean was dead. So like his Jean was dead. Like young Jean was still there, and what was really great about also the other thing too was Bendis was still at Marvel when I was there, and they were kind of like, no, don't touch anything that's like Bendis's. Like don't do anything that could be perceived as critical of what Brian did. And I was like, well, maybe if I like talk to him and like explain my point of view. And they're like, no, don't talk to him. Like, don't do that. And it's funny because I did talk to him recently. I don't remember why. I just like reached out to him. I don't know. I was like, we're trapped at home. And he gave me a quote for this book I did with my friends getting it together at out now from Image Comics.
Which is so great.
I haven't read it yet, but the trade is right there.
Thank you. Both of you go review it on Amazon. Even though you haven't
Consider
read it yet,
done.
Do it.
Done.
Thank you.
5 stars immediately.
Thank you.
I love. We talked about. I think like.
Wait. We're not promoting that book. We're not promoting that book. We're talking about
go.
We don't want to lose. We don't want to lose viewers. But I'll finish on this. I'm really sorry. I have to go. I did talk to Brian. Brian was like, "You totally could have done that. I'm so sorry that like they told you that. Oh well." And once he had left, and like I don't think he like I think everyone like kind of had a bad taste in their mouths after that experience. Mm-hmm. In terms of just like his exit, like I think everyone was just kind of mad at everyone. I don't really know the details. I was like, fuck it, I want to deal with this Jean thing, and so that's how I got Winter's End. I'm so sorry. I do have to bounce you left.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Sina. I appreciate you.
Get out of here. Thank you so much, Sina.
This was wonderful.
Always.
Thank you.
Thank
I
you
had
for
fun.
Being so great. Thank you.
Take care. Bye.
Man, there you go. That was a surprise.
Dayspring, thank you so much. That was so sweet. I will say, like, there was a part of me that was like, is he gonna get Sina? But I didn't want to speak it into existence, because then like if it was anything else, I just would have been like, oh, thanks.
When I was like, maybe we should just postpone this episode because I'm trying to like coordinate something, and then his schedules are all over the place.
Oh yeah.
And it worked. And I mean, Sina's such an amazing human being, and Sina has supported this podcast not only by being a guest, but also like regramming and always reaching out. Like such a great human.
I go every now and then, especially during the pandemic, he would like just do a live with one of his friends. Yeah, and I would just like be there watching, and just in the comments there'd be like 10 or 12 of us, and the whole time I was like, don't fangirl about your paper. Don't fangirl about your paper.
Fangirl about your paper.
But it was just it's just he's such a great guy, and I will say that like this comic taught me so much about the queer community. Like I've always been, I've always tried to be as much of an ally as possible, right? I did a documentary on my friend who is a drag queen in town for my capstone for my minor, and I've being in theater, like you don't escape it. Like you are going to know people who are gay, and the big one for me that I didn't realize at all when I first started reading was how much of a faux pas it was for Jean to out Bobby. Like, my dumb little straight boy brain was like, oh, that's an interesting story element, and like didn't even consider that like, hey, that's That's a really fucked up thing to do to someone.
Yeah, no, and it's so interesting that you said that because yeah, even me as at the time being a very much adult LGBTQI identifying individual, I was like, oh, look at that, Bobby's gay, and it didn't even click on me that wait, no,
Mhm.
Gene outed Bobby, and the only thing I can say is that the conversation just wasn't there at the time, you know,
Mhm.
and that is sort of I think in terms of our fandom brought a very important issue that has progressed significantly in comics. It's still not perfect, but at least we've made strides to go somewhere. And you know, that's a really interesting scene because again, I was excited that they confirmed that Bobby was gay. It totally went over my head
Yeah.
again that oh wait, Gene outed him. And
Yeah.
so
And then
so
like
I did
the thing that like it's another one that like haunts me. It's from that Ice Master one where he just screams, "You know what you did,"
yeah,
talking to
yeah,
Gene, and it's
yeah.
like it's a big holy shit moment. It's
Yeah.
very powerful, even just like talking about it.
Remind me, in Winter's End, the '05 had already gone back in
I
time, and Gene already had
Yeah.
the memories of teen Gene at that point. Because then even Bobby says like that wasn't right, Gene, but I forgive you and all that
Hmm.
stuff. And you know, it's see what Cena did, and this is what I thought was so masterful. There were so many sci-fi elements at play.
Hmm.
Here, time travel, seeing alternate versions of yourself, mutant powers, being a superhero, and they were able to use all of those elements as a lens to analyze the mutant metaphor and how it's
Hmm.
applicable to being LGBTQIA plus. So I'm so glad we were able to surprise you.
That was so great.
I probably was going to spoil it because I was just like, well, I don't want you to not be prepared. But you were, the second scene that came on, you had like, I saw it, man. Like you were on and everything. Like,
I like there was honestly like at the very beginning, like my arms were shaking and I'm like, where are my notes? What did I write down? But like I have this like block in my brain where I'm just like, always be cool and collected, even if inside I'm like on fire. I'm just like
no,
everything's
man,
terrible.
your, your game face was next level. And like,
Thank you.
I came on and when I started the Zoom, I was like, oh, Cena's there already. And like, I didn't get to do like even like the full like song and dance where we like interview you in great detail. That takes up like 2 hours of the, but that just means we're going to have you back again in the future.
Oh, literally anytime. We said Loki, my preparation for that is I'm just going to listen to Justin and Alicia when they recap things and I'm
Oh
going to try to
God.
tune them because they are so good.
I love Justin and Alicia so much. The
Like
X5 is so great. Where can people connect with you?
they can connect with me on Instagram. My Instagram is Greg_House_, because you can't get Greg House as an Instagram handle. It's impossible because of that damn show.
Ah!
um, Anything else though? I'm not really on. I'm not really on Twitter. I think I have a Twitter. If anyone finds my Finsta, I'll Venmo you $3. That is a promise. I accept all followers, especially if you want to talk to me about nerd stuff. And if you want to read that paper, I'll send it to anyone and their dog.
Yes! And the dog won't eat the homework this time. Boom!
Mm-mm.
Alrighty, guys. As always, I'm the Uncanny Dace Ring signing off.